Good afternoon. On the 11th of September 2001, the United States of America suffered 4 attacks that were coordinated and planned extensively, where 4 commercial aircrafts, 2 American airline airplanes, and 2 United airplanes were hijacked and flew into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, respectively. These attacks were supposedly organized by the Islamist militant group, Al-Qaeda, making them terrorist attacks. Most of the students in this classroom were either 10 or 11 years old. At that age, was it ever made clear the reason for the attack? Did you understand what was going on? Or do you remember a horrible event happening where planes flew into buildings and people died? Because that is what I certainly remember and was told and thought when I was at that age. We all know what happened during the 9/11 attacks, but do we know why? There are many conspiracy theories considering the 9/11 attacks regarding national security and global security. Most of these conspiracies are just theories, but once there is evidence or proof for a conspiracy, it becomes a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy, not a conspiracy theory. The big question is, who is to blame for this tragedy that cost around 3,000 innocent lives? Was it the Islamist militant group Al-Qaeda, or was it the United States government that planned the attacks? This is what we know and what we have been told by the media and the US government. The 9/11 was a terrorist attack, and the reason of the attack was due to religious conflicts between the nations, mainly Muslim versus Christianity. It is ironic how the most closely examined day in history is also one of the most mysterious days in history. So, we can only assume, trust, and believe that the media and the US government has provided is true. But if we take a closer look at this evidence, there are loopholes in certain photographs and videos questioning whether the government was trying to hide evidence or fake a story in which the general public would believe to be true, which leads us to question and explore the attacks in a different light. Ultimately, there is another side to the attacks, showing that the US government aren't as innocent as they seem to be. Let's look at the following points. First, the United States used 9/11 as an excuse to start wars in the Middle East. And people may ask, why didn't they just interrogate the Al-Qaeda and punish them? Why all of a sudden start 2 wars and send more lives into jeopardy? For example, the American soldiers. Even the Iranian president himself stated that the United States used September 11 attacks as an excuse for launching wars on Iraq and Afghanistan. He further states that the attacks were a complicated, designed game to affect people's emotions and pave way for the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq. He also says that the US launched those wars to solve their own economic problems. The US needed a reason to attack the Middle East without the rest of the world getting suspicious. And the reason for the war would be for oil. As we all know, America is one of the world's powerhouses. And in order to remain at the top, you have to be powerful. And since there is a shortage of fossil fuels in the whole world, the more oil and natural resources you have, the more powerful you are. Secondly, the evidence that was released by the government is suspicious. Let's look at the Pentagon, which is these 2 pictures here. There was no wreckage of a Boeing 747 on site. If you see these pictures, there was no wreckage, no debris of a tail or a head or even an engine that was left on site. Surely there must have been some wreckage or some sort of debris left over. How can a plane with a wingspan of 122 feet make a hole that is only 65 feet wide? So the plane's size doesn't match the size of the damage it did on the Pentagon. And how can a plane carrying so much fuel cause so little damage when it caused so much damage with the World Trade Center's North and South Towers? And another piece of evidence is that the only video recording that the government released, they only released one video recording, and the date was September the 12th, not September the 11th. That is also very suspicious. And on September 23rd, 2001, Condoleezza Rice, the National Security Advisor, had stated that they had evidence that linked bin Laden to the terrorist attacks and would release that evidence in due time. Well, America and the world are still waiting for that evidence. And in that time, since September 11th, America has launched 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iran based on Iraq, based upon no evidence. So as you can see, the plane's size didn't match the hole. Another suspicious aspect is that firefighters that were the ones that were first on the scene said that a bomb went off. Why would he say a bomb went off when the plane had already crashed into the building for some time? This was the South Tower at the World Trade Center. So Louis Kahuli, one of the first firefighters on the scene that was evacuating people out of the South Tower, said the following: "We were the first ones in the second tower after the plane struck. I was taking firefighters up in the elevator on the 24th floor to get in position to evacuate workers. On the last trip up, a bomb went off. We think there was bombs set in the building." And this is not the only testimonial. There are many other firefighters stating that they heard an explosion and said that it definitely was a controlled demolition. Could there have been bombs strategically placed in the building to ensure a successful demolition? Just like that, the South Tower of the World Trade Center just crashed like a controlled demolition. So here's a video clip showing you how the tower collapsed, the South Tower collapsed. And another suspicious piece of evidence is that how did a passport of one of the hijackers of the plane survive when there was so much debris? What are the chances of a passport surviving when almost everything was burned and destroyed? And you guys can see the passport is in really great condition. Furthermore, the government ignored warnings from Al-Qaeda, as it says in the article from CNN. It marks the first time the White House has acknowledged there was a warning of a potential hijacking linked to bin Laden prior to the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. But they did not take the warning seriously. Was this done on purpose to cover a bigger story? If the public asked why the US didn't protect their own nation that had $40 billion on national security, they could simply say, "We ignored warnings because we did not think it would be that serious." They pretended to have received warnings to seem less guilty to the public. However, people will say that these are all conspiracy theories and are not true. They are only out there to make money, and that the business of making money with conspiracies might be a conspiracy in itself. Laura van Vossen states in her The Economics of Conspiracy Theories article, conspiracies in general contain movies, television shows, books, speaking engagements, newspapers, magazines, and blogs. These are all ripe with speculation and gossip, as well as conspiracy theories, and there is an eager audience for their wares and money to be made. But, as I mentioned earlier, if there is evidence and actual proof for a conspiracy theory, it then becomes a conspiracy. Thus, the 9/11 attacks on the United States of America is a conspiracy, as there is enough evidence to prove it. So, the evidence the government released is suspicious and contains errors. 9/11 was planned to increase American nationalism, bring the nation together, to start propaganda, and to start wars. So, the facts are in front of you, and it is up to you to decide.